Hi, and welcome to part 2 of this really long book review. I will put the link for part 1 in the description if you happen to click this one or something. But yeah, thank you for continuing to watch my very long rambling. I so appreciate it. And yeah, enjoy the rest of this video. So at this point moving forward, about halfway through the book, like 400 moving forward, we learn that Nesta's actually a dancer. And so Elaine was telling the familia a story at the dinner table about how she won over a duke because she danced with him one night. And she did it because she didn't marry the guy, but she did it out of spite. And so because of that story that Elaine tells them, we get that scene where Reese tells Nesta that she is to learn how to dance the dances of the night court of the the court, and she's to seduce Eris, not like to bed, but just to remind him that they are allies and that he is on their side. It was just a really cool scene seeing Nesta shine and just really be in her element. I really enjoyed seeing her enjoy herself. And it was just a nice scene, and then Cassian got jealous and wanted to dance with her, so that was funny. But before that, Nesta finds out that they kept these magic swords from her. Cassian kind of lets the cat out of the bag because he's not always the brightest bulb, but poor thing. And she gets really pissed, and she actually makes it down the 10,000 steps, which is kind of crazy. So she goes straight to Amryn because she learns that Amryn was one of the ones who was, Amryn and Reese were the ones who were like, we shouldn't tell her that she has this. And then that's what leads Nesta to tell Feyre about the baby and the fact that she might die. And so that was really unfortunate, and Nesta really felt bad for saying that. And she, even after, as soon as it came out of her mouth, she was like, oh my god, I regret saying that. I went way too far. And so this part in the book was a really important part because this was a turning point for Nesta's character. So Nesta, Cassian kind of started all this. He goes to Reese and he's like, I need you to get Nesta out of her before I kill her. And so Cassian takes Nesta to like go hiking. And for several days they are just hiking in silence, and Nesta, I felt so bad for her because she is just taking everything that Cassian is giving her to the point where she faints because she's dehydrated and just overworked. And so at this point they're away for about a week. And it's at this is the part that I was waiting for the entire book, this part and one other, where she finally breaks and admits all of her faults and all of her feelings and all of her, regrets that she's had thus far. And Cassian is just so comforting, and he's so there for her, and she feels completely comfortable crying and bearing her soul to this guy, and she just so appreciates him being there for her. And I was like, oh my god, I adore these two so much. I kind of wish that scene was like a little bit longer of her just, I wanted the two of them to just talk a little bit more, but I was so really glad to see to see Nesta just like break, and for her to let like all of the emotions flood to the surface, and for her to just admit that she was, because I'm not saying that Nesta was right all the time, she wasn't, and that's what makes her such a good, amazing, complex character, was that she did really mean things, including telling Feyre. But it was ironic because Feyre was actually pissed at the inner circle because they lied to her. She wasn't even mad at Nesta at all because it came out really bad, but she told her the truth. And so later on, when Feyre and Nesta finally see each other again, Nesta apologizes, and Feyre is like, I completely forgive you, it's fine. And I was like, oh my god, I love these two so much. And then we have another scene, because this was great about the last, what was it called, the last book before this one, the little one. It was the winter solstice, which is also Feyre's birthday. And because right before Nesta apologizes to Feyre, she killed Lyanthus, that death god thing. That was crazy. She's amazing. But yeah, so right after that, Nesta takes Cassian, because she, at this point, I mean, they're still like friends with benefits, but she cares for him and she considers him a friend, and they are at that stage. And so she takes her with him to go see the cottage one last time. And look what I made. I made the dresser. So I was looking at fan arts the other day, and I saw that somebody was like actually doing these. decided to make one, and I thought it came out, I mean, I'm not an artist, it's not the best, but you know, Farah and Cassian, Nesta and Elaine, I just thought it was cute. So I have a picture, I'll post a picture of like what it looks like on my shelf, but I thought it was, I thought it was kind of cute, and then it has little things, and you can put stuff in it, and I just, yeah, I did this yesterday. But anyway, so the winter solstice, and I thought it was really cute because Gwen got Nesta and Emery. She gave her a little chapter of the book that she's writing with that the other lady is writing about the Valkyries, and how she put in a chapter about the three of them and the revival of the Valkyries. I thought that was so special. I love these girls. I love them so much. But yeah, so we get to winter solstice, and Nesta is actually there and participating, because we learned that in the last time she was really not doing so great, but because of everything, but there was a fire going on, and every single time that the fire cracked, she would get a vision, like she would replay her father getting his neck snapped, and so that's why she was so on edge and like not doing great that night. But yeah, so Cassian got Nesta a really old book that first winter solstice, that he threw away because they had a little argument. But I thought Feyre's gift to Cassian was so cute, so thoughtful and meaningful, and I love Feyre to death. I love her. She made a painting for him of when the three brothers made it to Ramiel and like they won the right, so he like got emotional, and I was like, you are the cutest little being on the planet. But anyways, I was so excited, and it was so nice because Azriel actually got Nesta a gift, and it was basically like a little book light, and I was like, that's so sweet. I want to know so much about Azriel. I'll talk about that in a second, but I thought that was so sweet, and then she gave him a hug, and I really like their relationship, whatever is of their relationship, because they both have kind of like an understanding. Like they don't really talk too much, but they kind of have like this underlying understanding with each other, that both of them just have been through some stuff, and they just see each other and don't expect the other to be anything. And I don't know, I just really like their kind of, their relationship. And I just really want to know more about him because we have barely scratched the surface with his freaking character. Okay. And then we get to page 604. This was like one of the best scenes. Naturally, within the last 150 pages of the book, similar to A Court of Mist and Fire, where we get anything between Rysand and Feyre, it's at the very end. Sarah J. Maas really loves her slow burns, doesn't she? Love it though. Love it. So we finally get the scene. So Cassian essentially gave Nesta like a little iPod, like a little Valaris iPod with all of her favorite music from all of the places that she would go to, and the music that was playing that night and the Court of Nightmares. And she's like, she gives it back to him. She's like, I can't accept this. This is too much. I can't accept this. And he's like, why? He's like, it's not a wedding ring. Just take it. And so she finally, the gift was so thoughtful that she literally starts crying, and he's like, why are you crying? Why are you so emotional right now? And she finally, this was the other scene. I was really hoping for that scene that we got where she broke and admitted her feelings about her dad and how she did so wrong to her sisters. So I was glad to see that, but then I was also so happy to see the scene where she finally admits her feelings to Cassian. And she tells, and I knew that she was going to tell him that she doesn't deserve him. Like, I literally knew that she was going to say those words. And so she finally, like, gushes everything out to him. She's like, you are too good. You are too good of a person. I am nothing. Like, I do not deserve you. And so he, like, I don't even think she's, like, looking at him when she's saying that, because when she finally looks up at him, he's just standing there, like, stunned and, like, crying because of everything that she just said. And I was like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm! Wait. Everybody calm down!
And it was really funny because Nesta and Cassian's slow burn was really different from Feyre and Rysand's slow burn. So Nesta and Cassian were essentially friends with benefits from the very beginning up until now. And Feyre and Rysand kind of danced around each other for the majority of the book, until they actually, like, did anything. And finally, like, admitted their feelings to each other. Or when Feyre accidentally found out that they were mates. And it was funny because I realized that both men, both Rysand and Cassian, pretty much knew that Feyre and Nesta were going to be their mates. They just didn't say anything because they didn't want to either, well, Rysand didn't want to push Feyre away, and Cassian also didn't want to scare Nesta off. So I just thought that was a really funny, it was an interesting juxtaposition between the two relationships. That finally happens, and then they finally like sleep together throughout the night, and she wakes up in his arms, and it's really sweet. And then Nesta and Amren are on good terms again, which is really cool. Oh my god. And then so we get to the part, it's on page 642, where they finally admit, or Cassian finally admits that they're mates, and like he says the words. And there was a part that I was like, oh no, Cassian. So because they're talking, and what's her name, Nesta doesn't really like the word, she doesn't really want to use the word mate. And Cassian's like, why? And he says something about how he wasn't expecting to be shackled to her. And she was like, really? Shackled? And I was like, oh, Cassian, and he regretted that immediately. It was funny because he's like, that was a really poor choice of words. I am sorry. And I was like, yeah, that was a really poor choice of words. You couldn't have said that to the worst person, dude. And so naturally she gets really mad. I get it. I would have been offended too if you told me that you were shackled to me. Like, rude. But so she finally hones in on the bargain that they made in the beginning of the book when they were training, and like he was like, oh, if you train, then I'll give you something. And so she tells him basically like, don't talk to me for a week until I talk to you. So they get into a fight, and then they go their separate ways. And so Nesta goes to Emery's house to kind of just like have a girl, or not to have a girls' night, but like to cry to her, to tell her everything that just happened with Cassian. And then Gwen, God bless her little soul, actually leaves the library for the first time in 2 years to go and be there for Nesta. So that was really, really big of her. And then we get to that part that was insane. I'm telling you, these last 100 pages, like I could not handle it myself. Where the Illyrians basically, well, it wasn't the Illyrians, it was that queen who basically kidnapped the 3 girls and threw them on the mountain for the blood rite. And nobody can go get them. So they're stuck there, and they have to survive by themselves, because Cassian was like, I'm gonna go in and get them. And Rhys was like, no, you're not, because that's against the rules. And he was like, dang it, you're right. So that was intense. I was not expecting that. That was a really cool twist. And then we learn that freaking Feyre and Rysand made a bargain with each other that if one of them dies, the other one dies. So if we lose one of them, we lose the other one. And at this point, we're going to lose the 3 of them because Feyre's pregnant. And they just tell everybody this, and they're like, yeah, we made a bargain. And so Amren's pissed because she's like, you guys are some stupid romantic little stupid heads. And I mean, I love them, but come on now, don't do this to me. And that is another scene that I would have loved to see, is the conversation between the 2 of them when they were talking about that, and when the bargain tattoo would have like showed up on their arms. I would have liked to see that. So finally, we're back in the blood rite. The girls find each other. Gwen and Emery and Nesta all tell their stories together before they climb the mountain. So they really bare their souls to each other, and they make sure that nothing is left on the table, or they, you know what I'm trying to say. They just talk to each other. And there was a part, and it reminded me of in the last Harry Potter movie, when Hermione was telling Harry that she would go with him, and Harry was going to go see Voldemort and die, because Nesta was like, I'm going to need the 2 of you to go up the mountain and touch the little stone thing or whatever it is so that you can survive, and I'm going to stay here and I'm going to fight. And Gwen was like, no, I'll stay here with you. And I was like, oh my god, my heart. And then we learn, so Nesta like hits Gwen, and then Emery takes her, and then she fights the dudes who were coming up the mountain. And then we learned that ataraxia means inner peace, so that was cool. And then on page 716, we finally see that Nesta uses the word mate. And when she uses that, when she says that, it gives her like the extra power and the extra oomph that she needs to finish off fighting that Bellius guy, Emery's cousin. And then so right when she's going to like die, because this guy has bested her because she is so tired, and he's literally about to slit her throat, the queen wearing the crown and Cassian come into the picture. Cassian kills this guy, and he's kind of under the queen's control. So she tells him to kill, that's all she says. And so Nesta is being held by him, and so Cassian he can't stop himself, so he ends up pointing the knife at himself. And in the book it says that he plunged the knife towards himself, and that's all it took for Nesta to really like erupt and basically in her own cauldron way, like mist and unmake the queen from existence. And so she erupted so powerfully that it could be felt in the human lands. And mind you, hold on. Mind you, this girl was in the Illyrian steppes. This girl, hold on. I will show you. I mean, you know, but I will show you. She was up here. Can you imagine down here? Down here. That's a lot of land. Okay, and so right after that, things were just happening. So on page 733 is the scene where Nesta, oh my god, so Nesta finally comes back home and is all bloodied from the right and all that. And Feyre is literally in the middle of giving birth. She is like 2 months early. She's bleeding everywhere. She's just pale and like is just on the bed. And Rhys is, I couldn't even like handle. He was freaking out because the love of his life is literally dying in front of him. And so that entire scene where Nesta basically gives up all of her power, or almost all of it, because the mother gives her a little bit. She wears all 3 of the dead tropes. And she literally plucks the harp so that time stops. And she literally, I was so excited, but she gives up all of her power in order to save Feyre and Rhysand and the baby. So one moment she's like on one side of the room, and the other moment she's leaning over Feyre and telling her she's like, whatever it takes, or I'll give it up, or whatever she was saying, I forgot. And so essentially she gives up part of herself to bring back her sister and her family back to life. And I was like, if that's not the most selfless thing. So that's essentially where the book ended. They have the baby. He's gorgeous. His name is Nyx. Like the river, like, oh wait, that's Styx. The river Styx. Oh, I'm stupid. I was like, oh, they named him River Nyx. No, that's River Styx, like in mythology. Anyways. So that's essentially the end of the thing. And then Cassian and Nesta go through like a mating ceremony. And I thought it was really funny because so Rhys and Nesta's relationship was really tricky up until this point, because he absolutely despised her. She didn't think of herself, for a while she didn't think enough of herself to try and change his mind. And then eventually, I mean, she was just kind of annoyed by him anyway. She didn't like his attitude. It's funny how their relationship changed, and he literally was like on her feet kissing her hand and saying thank you because she brought back, I mean, he wasn't even saying thank you for his own life. He was saying thank you because she brought back, you know, his mate and his child. So he's like indebted to her for literally all of eternity. And then the last note I have here is on page 743. It remains Queen's Koshi, the Bonecarver's brother, and a still looming war. And so that's what I feel like the next book is going to be about. Okay, so I essentially just told you the entirety of what happened in the book. I don't know why I do that. If you've gotten this far, thanks. But so now I'm going to talk about my actual thoughts of the book. So this was my favorite book in the entire series. A Court of Mist and Fury it's like right here is this book, and then A Court of Mist and Fury is like right there. Like, I love those 2 books so much. This book had, I mean, probably also because it was like 750 pages, but Nesta's character arc it was like a total 180. She made a complete change in character and attitude, and not just overnight either. It was like over several months, like not almost a year, like 6 months. I think I'm just gonna read it because I just wrote this a little bit ago. So Nesta's character development was one of the best I have ever read. She went from being a hateful, self-loathing woman who didn't think she deserved love or kindness to literally sacrificing herself for the people that she loved, including her mate, family, and friends. She let her friends go and win the right while she stayed to fight anybody coming up the mountain. She gave up her power, not exactly knowing that it wouldn't include her life, for her sister, brother-in-law, and nephew. She did that to save them, but also for Cassian, Azriel, Mor, and Amren to not lose them, so that they wouldn't lose, you know, their brother and sister or whatever. And she just went through a lot with Cassian. So I really loved how Nesta, I mean, all of these characters are so selfless, and And I'd love to see how Nesta, being the character from the beginning of the series, who was just so hateful and so mean and so everybody thought that she was just so selfish, she ends up being one of the most selfless characters in the entire book. Like, she literally is more than willing to sacrifice herself for her friends, for her family, and for her mate. And she wants to give them everything. She wants to, you know, have everybody live their best life. And she's more than willing to sacrifice to have the people that she loves just live and be happy. So I also really love the dual perspective of Cassian and Nesta, like I said at the beginning, where I just like seeing Cassian's male point of view of his love towards Nesta. It was just nice seeing their perspective of each other also. Okay, this is a random side note, but for the life of me, I cannot think of anybody that I would fan cast for these characters. I don't know if like a show or a movie has been in talks for these books as of recently, but I cannot think of an actual actor that I know to play any of them. The only one that I can think of to come anywhere close is maybe Ian Somerhalder for Rhys, but like maybe literally just because the way that Damon acted in the Vampire Diaries is the way that Rhys acts when he's like not being with his inner circle. So that's like the only connection I have, but I cannot see any like actual actors playing these people. I imagined Henry Cavill's character in The Witcher, who is just that man. Anyways, he's like my number 2 after Chris Evans, who was forever my number 1. But anyways, so Henry Cavill in The Witcher with, you know, the buff and the hair is how I imagined Cassian. Obviously not the face, and obviously with darker hair, and obviously a little bit of darker skin. I even kind of imagined him as like Latino maybe, because obviously the Fae don't have like race in that sense. There's no like Mexican fairies, like that's not how it works in this fantasy book. There were several characters that Sarah J. Maas described as being pale or being darker, but we don't know. There's not like race in like as in our world in that world, but that's kind of what I imagined for Cassian. But yeah, I cannot put any actual actors or actresses' faces on these characters. Like I can't. So I absolutely love this book, and whenever I'm super invested in a book series like this, I don't really find a lot of criticisms, but the only criticism that I have is that, so we've had 5 books and it's a fantasy book and all that, and I feel like some people might actually be kind of annoyed. I'm not annoyed by it, but I can see why somebody would be, that nobody actually really dies in these books. It's kind of like Supernatural, where it's like a character dies, but are they really dead? No, because Feyre dies in the first one and she's brought back to life by all of the High Lords, and then Rysand dies in the last one and he was brought back to life by all of the High Lords, and then Feyre and Rysand and the baby were going to die, but then they were like weren't brought back from death, but their death was prevented by Nesta. So I feel like that might be a kind, not a plot hole, but kind of like a what the heck kind of situation. But when it's books like this where I am so in love with the characters and I care about the characters so much, I don't care. Like do whatever miracle you need to do, just keep them alive. Like I don't really care at this point. But I do want to talk about a couple theories that I have for the next books. I have no idea if there's even going to be a next book, but according to this one, to the end of this one, it really does seem like there's going to be more. Like the war is not over. Like I think there's going to be another war. So my phone died. I should really charge that more before I start filming. But I'm filming the rest of this on my camera and I'm trying to see if I'm in frame. I think so. Yeah, this last part is just going to be me talking about my theories for possible future books. And so the theory that I have, or what I would really hope to see in another book, is the progression of the storyline, but the main characters being a dual perspective of Azriel and Elaine. I feel like I look super washed out, hello, whenever I turn on my camera. I don't know, is that better? I can't tell. I'm really hoping that in the next book we get a dual perspective of Azriel and Elaine, because Feyre and Rysand are happily ever after with their child. Cassian and Nesta are mated and they are together, and Nesta doesn't really have to worry about her huge cauldron powers anymore. And so the only people that are left that I think that we really should get more in depth with their characters are Azriel and Elaine. They've been around since the very beginning. Elaine is one of the sisters, Azriel is one of the brothers, but what do we know about them? Truly. We know that Elaine is, you know, a very gorgeous girl. She likes to garden and she likes flowers and she doesn't like violence and all that jazz. But we don't know anything else about her. We don't really know too much about her personality. I mean, not really. Like, what do we really know about her? The one thing that we did pick up in this book is that she's very observant. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, what do we know about Asriel? Really, we don't know anything about his personality. We know that he is a very loyal person to his friends. He absolutely adores his friends and would do anything for them. We know that he tortures people. We know that he had a really rough childhood and was in a cage for most of his childhood and wasn't able to fly. What else do we know about him? We don't really know too much about Asriel's character. We don't know these two characters like hearts. We don't know them as deep as we know Feyre and Nesta and Cassian and Rhysand. We haven't been able to get into their heads yet. The other one that I was thinking of was maybe Mor and Eris. Not because I think that they should be together as a couple. I think they have a very toxic and traumatizing relationship, and I would not like that at all. I would prefer to get more into Asriel and Elaine's character. But Mor is another character that we know more about her than we know about Asriel and Elaine, I think, because of that conversation that Feyre had with her. But essentially that tells us her sexuality. And you know, like a person's entire being doesn't revolve around their sexuality. I know that was a big thing for Mor because that's kind of what it was, like a domino effect for several things that happened to her in her life. But I know there's more to her. I know there's more to her character, to her personality that I would like to get into. And when I think of Mor, I think of Eris. And the reason that I'm thinking of Eris is not because I find him particularly intriguing. I think he's an interesting character because of what Cassian told him at the end. He's like, I think you're a good man, but you're too much of a coward to be one. I thought that was a good line. But I think that reigns true with Eris's character. He was tortured by his dad. He watched or he didn't watch, actually. I remember that when his dad killed Lucien's lover hundreds of years ago. He wasn't present for that, and he didn't agree with it. So I think Eris is a really interesting character, and throughout this entire book, and part of the last one, Eris was like, oh yeah, you need to ask Mor what happened that day that I found her. You need to go and ask Mor. You need to go and ask her. Like, there's more to the story. And so I'm like, number one, why isn't he just telling them? And number two, what the heck else happened? Because Asriel, right, was the one who found Mor, or was it Cassian? Or I don't remember. But one of the brothers, or all of them, found Mor as she was nailed to whatever. But according to Eris, there's more to the story. So I'm just like super intrigued. Like, what else happened? Like, that we need to know. But yeah, I would prefer, it would be interesting to get Asriel, Elaine, and Mor's perspective, because there are conversations that need to happen between Mor and Asriel. These books have been hinting at Asriel and Elaine becoming a thing ever since they first met, because Asriel seems to have a really soft spot for Elaine, and Elaine always gets like really timid, or like extra timid and shy when she's around him. So it's like, what's gonna happen with those two? And it would kind of match off perfectly, because Cassian is with Nesta and Feyre is with Rhysand. So all that's left is the one brother and the one sister. So it's like, is that what's gonna happen? I saw some people shipping Asriel and Gwyn, which I think would be a really interesting relationship, but I don't know if Gwyn is necessarily ready to be around a man that way, let alone be around any men, let alone start a relationship with one. I think she still has more healing to do before she can actually do that. So in a way, I almost feel like Asriel and Elaine's relationship is inevitable. And the way that this book started with Nesta and Cassian's dual perspective, I think that in the next book we might get an Asriel and Elaine dual perspective. Just because they're still going to be involved in the war. Asriel's definitely going to be involved in the war. Elaine still has her powers from the cauldron. She still has her seer abilities, because we know that Nesta had hers. So Elaine, even though she doesn't use them, even though it might be dormant, pretty sure she still has those abilities, which might come in handy during a war. So I've been talking so much, I'm losing my freaking voice. I have that theory that we are going to get a dual perspective Asriel and Elaine book, like we did with this one, but with their characters. I think that'd be really interesting. So Asriel and Elaine's character relationship would be very different than Nesta and Cassian and Feyre and Rhysand. Feyre and Rhysand were kind of there's a lot of sexual chemistry between the two of them. They're kind of dancing around each other in the entirety of that one book. And then Nesta and Cassian were like very rough and had that friends with benefits relationship going on. I feel like Elaine and Asriel would kind of be like a Bridgerton situation where they would just have like a lot of stolen moments in the garden, and like he would be very, very gentlemanly with her and all of that kind of stuff until, you know, one or the other finally opens up to the other. I wouldn't mind Elaine ending up with Lucien. I feel really bad for Lucien actually, because first lover was killed and now his mate doesn't want anything to do with him. So I feel really bad for him. I wouldn't mind Elaine ending up with Lucien, but I also wouldn't mind her ending up with Asriel. So I would just really, I really need to get more into Elaine's character so that she doesn't like annoy me more, because this was my thing with Elaine. So I do really like her character, and I appreciate that she loves her sisters and her sisters love her, and that everybody thinks that she's this sweet little thing. But the same way that Nesta didn't go out and hunt with Feyre, Elaine didn't either. She was still at home too. And I understand that she didn't like the violence and she just wanted to tend her garden. But when you're nearly starving, I mean, it's time to woman up. Like, you need to do what needs to get done, not just because you're like timid and you don't want to do it. So I was always annoyed that Rhys was so angry at Nesta for not going out to help Feyre, but nobody seems to give that same thought to Elaine for some reason. So I don't know. That's just my thinking. Let me know what your thoughts are on Elaine. I'm really interested. I don't really see too many people talking about her, but I don't think I think she's innocent, but I don't think she's quite as like airheaded or innocent or super cutesy as everybody thinks she is. I feel like the same way that Nesta had a really gooey center, I think that Elaine has some other stuff that she deals with and doesn't talk about, and she probably uses the exterior that she presents to everybody as in the same way that Nesta used her like meanness. I don't know for sure, but I think there's more to Elaine that meets the eye. There's obviously more to Asriel than meets the eye. So I'm really desperate to get into their characters. Even if they don't end up together, it's fine. I just really want to know more about Asriel, because he's always that silent, mysterious stranger. Not really, but he's just kind of always just there. And we don't really get into it too much with him. And I'm just so intrigued by him, and I just want to know more. I'm really hoping that we get another book within a year, because I don't know how much more I could write. I read these books really fast, and I'm a slow reader. So the next book that I'm going to read is actually, let's pull this down. Let's get that out of the shot. So the next book that I'm going to read is actually, oh my God. The next book that I'm going to read is this one right here. This one. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I've been wanting to read this forever. I read 100 pages of it years ago and never completed it. But I thought I would read one book before I got into the next series, because Throne of Glass has like 10 books in it. So I thought I would read one book to kind of like cleanse my palate of the fantasy before I jumped into another one. So my next book review is going to be on this book. Probably maybe like within a week or so. But I hear that this like rips your heart apart. So I'm excited to cry for 7 days straight. I'm just kidding, but maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, I have Throne of Glass. I have this book right here. So I also really want Nerdy Inc. to come out with more of their book covers for this book, because they have a whole thing with all of the dust jackets is what they're called for these books. I think these are cool covers, but I kind of prefer the ones that I've seen on Nerdy Inc., if you know what I'm talking about. Young adult fantasy and young adult books in general are one of my absolute favorite things to read. So I am super excited to get into this series. I've known about it literally forever. So I'm excited to get into it. I hear some people say that this book, that people either love or hate this book, or this book is like what made them not want to continue. I'm going to finish this book for sure. I know that fantasy can sometimes take a minute to get into because of the world building, but I love it, and I can usually see the potential of a book when I'm reading it. So I'm pretty sure that I'm going to really like it, and I'm really excited to get into all of the books, because reading long fantasy series, one of my favorite things to do. What did you think about this book, and what are your theories for another book? I have no idea what's coming, but I'm just hoping that we get like a dual perspective Azrael and Elaine book. I think that would be really interesting. So yeah, like I said, leave any comments down below. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate anybody who does. And I think I'm gonna have to go make like a intermission type mini video so I can put in the middle so I could finish off the last one saying that there's a part 2, because I think this is gonna be really long and I don't want to upload an hour-long video. But yeah, like I said, thank you all so much for watching. If you have any, like I said, any comments, do it down below. If you want me to make any different kinds of videos, like if there's any tags that you would like me to do, I would love to know. I have a couple that I'm gonna probably do soon. Like I said earlier in my video, there was like a not so new booktube tag that I thought would be fun to do. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching again, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.